Want to learn how to make a delicious quick bread using hard apple cider? Join me as we visit and tour Woodfolk Cider and come back with it to make a delicious quick bread and some maple butter. Join me. Welcome to the first episode of 2025 of Farm to Fork. I'm Chef Connie Powers and you're watching Rogers TV. Today I am taking you to Woodfolk Cidery in Coldwater, Ontario. We're going to meet Alistair Whitehead and Martha Lowry, and they took us on a tour. It was a late August. It was a very warm day. The trees were full of fruit and they were about to start their harvest. So they took us on a tour and we brought home some of their hard cider. And today we're going to be making a bread using the cider. We're going to be making a maple butter topping that is delicious on this bread. And we're going to be making a salad dressing using the cider. So let's get started. So we brought home two different types of cider from their cidery, and it's all made on the premises. It is made with their fruit and also the adjoining fruit farm of Martha's dad. And so they were showing us a variety, and so we brought home two, and we're going to use this one's called Over in a Meadow, and this one is called Little Twig. The names are great. So we're going to be just using this one because this is the one we tasted on the tour, and it was really deep. So I'm thinking it's going to give our bread some flavor. Today we're going to start off by sifting 360 grams of flour. So I'm using my scale, and I'm going to tear it out and sift in 360 grams. Oops, a little bit too much. The next thing is 1 tablespoon of baking powder. All right, and then we can just sift that. I don't know if you can accurately measure flour without a scale. There's no room for mistakes when you're using a scale. We're going to put 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And now we're going to put in 3 tablespoons of maple syrup into the flour. So I'm using Red Mill. It's a local company in Millbrook. So we did do a tour on that maple farm, and so I like to use this. I like to use theirs. Now you'll see there's a cinnamon stick in it. This is their cinnamon infused maple syrup. Okay, we have 3 tablespoons. I can smell the cinnamon. That's not going to be really apparent after it bakes. It's just going to add a nice depth. And then we're going to put in our cider. So we're going to use about 12 ounces, which is just 1.5 cups. Now, we have 12 ounces here, but you can see that we're going to have to let the foam. That smells good. It smells like yeast. So you can smell the apple, the yeast in it, the fermentation. That's what's going to make our dough rise. Pour that in. So you'll notice I'm just doing this in a bowl. I'm not doing this in a mixer because I don't want to lose all that nice foam. Okay, let's take it off our scale. So while I'm mixing this, it's smelling just like I have used yeast. Okay, so it's a shaggy dough. Now, we've got it a little bit mixed, and then we're going to add some butter. I have a trick to show you about butter. So many people say that when they're measuring butter, they have some errors in it. All right, so I've melted 4 tablespoons, but I'm only using 3 in the batter for the fat. We'll put that aside. We're going to use that on top of the bread. Now think about this bread. If you would like, you could add a little bit of rosemary. You could add a little bit of garlic. You could put fruit in it. It's a base. Okay, you can see, just mix it until it's mixed. So it's a scone, it's a biscuit. Now we're going to put it into a greased pan. As a New Year's resolution, can we move away from spraying our pan with the spray that comes in cans? Try to move away from that and use a piece of paper and a little bit of shortening, a little bit of lard, butter if it applies. This one I don't think it does. Anything that is a natural fat. All right, so we're going to put that into our loaf pan. You can see it's a biscuity scone type of bread. Okay, let's get that in. Try not to deflate it any more than you have to. Shape it into that loaf. And what I'm going to do on top of that is I am now going to just use, if it's separated, get the solids back up. I'm going to put 1 tablespoon, drizzle that on the top, and we're going to put that in the oven. We're going to pop that in the oven, and we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. And we're back. I'm Chef Connie Powers, and you're watching Rogers TV Farm to Fork. Today we are taking you to Woodfolk Cider in Coldwater, Ontario. So the owners, Alistair and Martha, took us on a tour, and today we have it in the oven. We made a loaf bread using the hard cider. It's in there, I forgot to mention before the break, put it in for about 45 to 55 minutes, depending on your oven. I've set it for 45, and I'll check it in a test when I hear the timer. So this is the cider that we're using today. It's Woodfolk Cider over in a meadow. And this is made with their own apples from their orchard and Martha's father's apple orchard next door. So this bread is completely leavened. It's a quick bread, and this leaven is leavened completely with this cider. I want to show you a little chefy tip about some butter. So you get a recipe, and it says a tablespoon, 4 tablespoons, and you struggle with, how do I get a tablespoon? I want to show you an easy way to get an accurate measurement of tablespoons of butter. So on the package, I just didn't take a fresh package. On the package, there is always a measuring tool on the side, printed right on the side. So what you want to do is you want to find a 1/4 cup. So, whoops, wrong way. I have this little measuring thing. I have had it forever. It's what I use often. You want to find a 1/4 cup. So you get that 1/4 cup measurement, and you go quarter or corner to corner. Corner to corner. And each one of these is going to be a tablespoon, a rather large tablespoon maybe, but that is a tablespoon. And you might think, oh, that's a lot. Maybe you were under measuring. And then maybe your recipe calls for teaspoons. You cut it in half, 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 and now I have 8 teaspoons. That's all that is. So we're going to set that aside. Now, the next recipe that I'm building is going to be a maple butter that you can use on this bread. So I'm going to use what we just cut. I'm going to put this in to a bowl. And then we're going to put in a little bit of that maple syrup. I'm still going to use the Red Mill cinnamon infused one. I have another one from them, a bourbon barrel aged one. It would be delicious in this, a nice depth. Oh, I better measure. So about 3 tablespoons in this butter. If you don't use it all in one sitting, just keep it refrigerated and it'll last for a long time. Okay, now that is going to be mixed. It's a little bit cold right now, so I know that I can't mix it up. I'm going to let it sit, warm up, and then I'm going to mix it up and get it all ready to go. Right now, we're going to be making some hard cider dressing with Dijon mustard, delicious. Right now, I'm going to take you on the tour to meet Alistair and Martha on their cidery. Take a look at this. Welcome to our series, Farm to Fork. Today we're in Coldwater, Ontario, at a unique place to our series. We're at Woodfolk Cider, and we're going to meet Martha and Alistair, co-owners and co-operators of this orchard-to-bottle cidery. Let's go meet the owners. Here we are with the co-owners and co-operators, Alistair and Martha. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us here. So you're going to take us around and show us a little bit about the cider operation.
For sure.
And you say there's children on the farm, but they're really little and they're not working.
They're teeny tiny.
They're teeny tiny.
Yeah,
so they.
2 and a 4-year-old, they're not very helpful yet, but we're working on them.
So this is a unique operation because you are actually growing the fruit, making the cider, and then retailing it.
Yes. Up until now, we started in December at farmers markets. We sell online, so we do local deliveries, but we're opening up here on the farm this coming Saturday, so you'll be able to come by. We're going to have a little tasting set up.
And this is a brand new building.
Yes.
You've built this, and you told me you built it yourself.
Yes, we've been building it the last about year and a half. We've been chipping away at this, me and Martha. So,
well, we're going to go inside because it is quite a grand project you've got here. You're about to say something.
I said it was him who built it.
But maybe you had the design.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go and just look at some of the orchard if you.
Of course, we'd love to.
Okay. Where are we headed right now?
So we're headed down to our second orchard. We're just leaving our semi-dwarf orchard here, so we have 2 different orchards on the farm. One is a more modern, high-density planting, a trellised orchard, so it almost looks more like a vineyard than your traditional orchard. The one we just left there is all semi-dwarf trees, so they'll grow big and look kind of more like an orchard you might be more familiar with.
So am I right in saying that this is an apple orchard? Like
Apples and pears, yes.
Apple and pears. Okay,
yes.
So you make pear cider too.
Well, we're working on it. They say pears are for your heirs. We've planted a bunch of pear trees, but
like Perry pears?
Perry pears, yeah. So proper Perry pears, but they take often about 30 years to come, into proper full bearing. So it's a long-term goal.
Well, Alistair, you can take us through this. What's this?
For sure. So we are just coming up to our main orchard here. You're looking at about 2,000 trees, all cider-specific varieties that we planted about 5 years ago.
You say cider-specific, so these would not be consumable for anything else?
You could eat them. They won't make you sick, but they're not going to taste good.
They're sour.
Some of them taste good.
Some of them taste good. It varies, but a lot of them, the tannic ones, they dry your mouth out.
That's
they're
right.
very
Like the Perry pear.
Yes.
Just absorbs all the moisture.
Yeah.
And what that is the tannins in the apple, which is what makes the cider, the end result, taste so good. Because once the sugars have all fermented out and turned to alcohol, you're left with all the structure and the complexity and the interesting flavors that you get from those apples, which is what you get from a beautiful cider, say like you might have in France or England. And they make it. They're more wine-driven ciders. We don't back sweeten things. So if you open it, it's almost like a bottle of champagne or Prosecco. It's dry.
Take me through your season. What do you start off with doing?
Well, so really, I guess it starts in midwinter. It's kind of pruning season, so that's when the trees are dormant, and we get into the orchards and we do all our pruning. So that's a fair chunk of work there, and then we move into spring, where everything starts growing up, and we're getting our initial sprays in. We are managing everything organically on this farm. But we do still spray. We spray a lot of beneficials, and we're trying to keep everything in check. Yeah, and then it's kind of, you're going through your bloom and your blossom, and you're just kind of watching for insect pressure and disease pressure and stuff like that, managing those things, trying to keep ahead of things. And then we kind of get to where we are now. We just did our first mow of the season, and we're starting to get some fruitlets on the trees here, the little apples. These are Crimson Crisps right here.
You pick these by hand? Like, there's no machinery that does this?
There's no machinery that does this. I think a dream in the future is that we would have enough money to get a sweeper, because they don't need to look pretty for making cider. So if we actually sweep them up off the ground.
You hand pick them, and I assume it's just the two of you?
Yeah.
And some willing volunteers.
Yeah. Volunteers.
My dad's farm is right beside ours, and then so he's got some apples that we use as well, and then our friend Steve is one concession over, and he's got 35-year-old trees over there, and we use those for
lucky
in our
you.
ciders as well.
They come off the trees, you wash them, you don't have to core or anything?
You don't have to core or anything, yeah.
And what do you do with the byproduct?
So the byproduct, which is what they call pomace, it gets diverted. A lot of it goes into our compost program, so it goes to local livestock producers. We do end up with quite a mountain of it at the end of the season. But yeah, so we incorporate some of it into our compost. Some of it gets diverted, as I say, to local farmers.
We're going to be tasting some of the cider. Let's see what they've got to show us.
All right, so I'll open a bottle here of...
what is this one?
This one's called Over in a Meadow. It is a blend of a bunch of apples from our farm and Martha's father's farm just down the road.
Yeah, you were saying your dad is working with you. He's got a 100-acre farm. And, you know, so it's a family business.
It's a family thing. It's family, it's friends, you know. We have like
Whoever
a whole
has
crew of friends who helps us plant and...
There's probably only one stipulation. They have to have some cider after. Is that...
Yeah, last time we planted, we had a nice cider in the orchard after we were all done.
Yeah.
Well, let's... Oh, that smells delicious.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, so this one's dry and tart. Drinks almost like a Prosecco, nice and bubbly.
Oh, that's delicious. It's dry. Like you said, not sweet.
Not sweet. And one of the, it's just, you know, they're very great food wines, or food ciders rather. They pair really well with food. The difference between the cider, just like it with wine, none of them are flavored. The only difference is the apples we use in them and the way we produce the ciders, just in the process. And it's amazing, just like wine, the difference in flavors you can get between the ciders just using apples. Yeah, and this one was
delicious.
Yeah.
So from the time you pick that apple, let's not even talk about, you know, the blossoms.
The orcharding, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about you pick the apples. When will that go from that apple tree to the bottle?
So from start to finish, it varies, but it's between about 8 months to a year. And then as we go with the business, we're hoping to do some more aging in barrel and stuff. So some of them will be even, you know, maybe 2 years out, stuff like that. But yeah, for instance, this one right here, Meadowland, this has been in bottle. This was from our 2022 harvest. So it's been in bottle almost just a little over a year and a half. Still drinking great. It's actually tasting really great right now. So yeah, when you make cider this way, it ages really well. It just kind of gets more complexity and interesting flavors over time.
Yeah. I like that whole approach, you know, the artsy way of making cider. It doesn't have to be formulated. It is what tastes good, and what you can change, you can play with.
Well, and it's something special too, because, you know, sometimes you just get a beautiful bottle, and, you know, once it's gone, you'll probably never have that exact same bottle again. You might have something special that's different, but it's kind of one of the things that every year you get to appreciate it and enjoy it till it's gone, for sure.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for having us here today. We've learned a lot. I see that you've got, sometimes it's in wood casks.
Yes.
And sometimes it's in stainless steel. That I wanted to ask you the difference of before we go.
Of course. So we do, currently we've been doing all our initial fermentations in steel. So this is where the initial ferment happens. We are currently doing some aging in oak. Those two barrels are not just for show, they're actually full. So we're finishing up some cider right now in some Chardonnay barrels there, and they're tasting very nice. So we're excited about that, and we're hoping to expand that this coming year with some really nice barrels we have coming up. And then we do eventually want to start doing some ferments in oak too, because that brings a whole other level of flavor to things, and it can be a tricky process, but something we're working towards. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you are continuously learning.
For sure.
And we really thank you for having us here. We learned a lot today.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
And we're back. That was a great tour. I'm Chef Connie Powers. You're watching Farm to Fork. We were just on a tour of Woodfolk Cider. And when you were away, on that tour, we took the bread out that we made earlier. So I'm going to bring that over. So the bread is made with the Woodfolk Cider. It's made with about 360 grams of flour, some baking powder. It is basically a biscuit bread. It's a quick bread. So we're going to take it out. It's a little warm. You can see it makes just a small amount. It's not a great big loaf, but that's just about all you want for a dinner. Yes, it has maple syrup in it, but if you would like, you can take the maple syrup out and you can substitute it with honey. It would make a little bit different of a bread. So it's warm. We may want to just give it a few seconds while it's cooling, and it did take 50 minutes in my oven at 375. While it's cooling, let's make a little salad dressing using the Woodfolk Cider. So it's simple. I've got a little mixer chopper thing. I'm just going to put it all in that. You could use an immersion blender. So we're going to start off with 1 small onion. I'm going to use a shallot. I like that in salad dressings. We're going to put that into our mixer. I'm going to put in about 3/4 cup of the apple cider. Now, this cider, I was looking at the back of it during the tour, and it has just a series of apples. I don't know how to pronounce the first one. Cortland, Empire, Spartan, Pippin, Honeycrisp, and this is just apples. There's nothing else in it. So you can see it's fermented so nice that we get that foam. I just used a stopper for it, like I would in a wine bottle. So once the foam is gone, the suds. Now, if you don't use the cider, which, you know, Alistair and Martha are going to not want me to say this, but you could use beer. It's not going to be quite the same flavor. You're going to get hoppy flavor rather than the sweet apple. You're going to put in a couple, 2 tablespoons, my little book says over there, 2 tablespoons, I think that was 1, of apple cider vinegar. You're going to put in about 1/4 cup of olive oil, eyeball it, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and then a couple teaspoons of Dijon mustard. You'll notice that I don't measure this stuff. Okay, so that's our 2 teaspoons of mustard. I'm going to put the lid on and give that a mix up. Now, another thing while you were gone, we made our maple butter, and I put it in a little crock. When I was cutting it up, I said 8 teaspoons. I doubled it. All right, so now I'm going to show you the consistency of our salad dressing. Smells amazing. I'm just going to pour it into this measuring cup. I'll put it into a jar into the fridge, and I can use it today. I can use it for a few days, and that's what we got, a nice, delicious salad dressing. So we're going to set that aside. I think our bread is ready to cut. So let's cut a section of it. I'm going to get a serrated. It was really important, if you remember, we put a tablespoon of butter on the top. That was really important. It gave us a nice golden brown, but it also kept it a little bit soft so that it didn't get too hard. All right, I've got the heel of the loaf. I'm going to put on a little bit of our maple butter. It melted because it's still warm. It doesn't get any better than this. That's lovely. This would be great as a lunch bread. It'd be great with a salad. Very nice rustic loaf. Oh, camera guy. That was great. This maple butter does not come across as a really sweet thing. You can make maple butter. You could also make it with honey. It will last forever in the fridge. You can just keep using it. Thank you to Martha and Alistair for taking us on the tour of the cidery. I learned so much that day, and I learned that hard work can really pay off. The two of them have young children, and they work themselves on this farm, on this cidery. It's a lot of work, but we appreciate the time they gave us. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, keep cooking.